fakes the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Wood, touchdown, LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Caught, touchdown, Tyler Higbee. It's Michael Brockers who gets there. A'Shawn Robinson. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Taylor Rapp, who had one taken away, will take this into the end zone.
Henderson with a good run and a first down, still on his feet.
Safety in the arms of Leonard Floyd. Up top, touchdown, Van Jefferson.
Terrell Lewis.
Everett in stride. Wow!
Hit behind the line. Terrell Burgess, 26.
Here's Bryson Hopkins at the goal line and in for his second touchdown. Malcolm Brown into the end zone.
Abu Khan with the strip sack.
Picked off by Troy Hill.
Akers with a stiff arm. Akers into the end zone. Cam Akers.
LA will play for the Lombardi.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. This is Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft. It's episode 298, and we're here because we have not gone over the draft class yet. We spoke to some of the prospects and some of the UDFAs that will be in Rams camp, and we're hoping to get some more on. But right now, we have not gone over the draft. For those of you who are listening to our live stream, we did a 3-day event for Downtown Rams and Downtown Sports Network. And we covered, a decent amount of it, obviously covered every pick, and you saw, our reactions to most of the picks, but let's go more in depth here and kind of break it all down. Alexis, we'll just kick things off with the first pick in the draft for the Rams, and that came at pick 52. The Rams stayed. They didn't trade down like we were thinking, and they went with running back Cam Akers out of Florida State. I know you and I both kind of hated the pick at first. I think people know by now and are tired of how long I've kind of gone on and said like how much I like this pick now after the fact. But now that you've had time to kind of marinate and, everything's all, in there, what are your thoughts on this pick, here in May?
So the reason that I didn't like this pick is because there was only one running back that I wanted at number 52, and that was Jonathan Taylor. And I didn't think that he was going to be there. He ended up obviously not being there. So, after he got picked up by the Colts, I very firmly did not want a running back at number 52 because I felt at that position, with all the running backs that were left, I didn't think that any should have gone at 52. And with our positional needs, I didn't want a running back unless it was going to be a guy like Jonathan Taylor. So I wasn't happy with the pick. If they were going to go running back, I still think I would have preferred J.K. Dobbins at that spot. I had him graded higher than Cam Akers, but listen, I think Cam Akers is a good player. I am excited, that he's a Ram. He might not have been who I wanted at 52. I think there were other players on the board that would have benefited our team more. But I'm excited. I think that, he's hungry. I think he's going to work hard. And I think that it just shows that the Rams are going to kind of go in that running back by committee position. I don't think that Akers is going to be a guy, like a Gurley, somebody who's going to kind of be that staple running back for you. I think the Rams this season are going to go and do something similar to what the 49ers did in that running back by committee. So I think we're going to have Akers, Henderson, and Malcolm Brown kind of rotating in there, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It was a little shocking to have a running back go 52nd overall when it first happened. I went back, and I won't bore everyone who's already heard this so many times, but the people that haven't, just letting you know that I basically hated the Akers pick. As soon as the Rams made that pick, I hated it. And then after the fact, I went back, stayed up pretty much all night watching Akers film. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I totally botched the evaluation on Akers. I believe that he might actually be the best running back in this draft. Basically ran behind nothing at Florida State. He's one of only 3,000-yard rushers in Florida State's history. Work done, and Dalvin Cook are the other two, so that's pretty good company there. Just saw a Rams video they posted. Really interesting. They had two scouts on a Zoom call with Les Snead and going over the film. And basically Michael Pierce, somebody that I've spoken with, at the Senior Bowl, he's a great guy. And I just really believe, he knows what he's doing out there. He was basically saying at the end of that video, I mean, this man could end up being better than Swift when it's all said and done. That was before they drafted him. That was during, the pre-draft process. So really interested to see that. If you're, interested in that, just check it out on the Rams Twitter. But basically, I agree with it. I think after I went back and watched the film, I think this is a guy that can be a multi-purpose back. He doesn't have to be Todd Gurley. Could he end up having that effect down the road? Absolutely. But when you have Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown and John Kelly, and honestly, don't, rule out Xavier Jones, the UDFA, out of SMU, I don't really think he has to be that. I think the running back by committee approach would be totally fine. But if they have to roll with him as the guy, I think they can do it. Moving on, we have another second-round pick. This one came in the wake of the Brandon Cooks trade to the Houston Texans. The Rams cooped up the 57th overall pick, and they selected none other than route technician Van Jefferson out of Florida. He originally transferred from Ole Miss. Talk to me about this pick, Alexis. I know initially he wasn't the guy you wanted. You wanted Mims, but I believe you do like Van Jefferson.
I do like Van Jefferson. I had him going more mid-third round, so it was surprising for me to see him go here. Like you said, I wanted the receiver position at this pick, but there was a couple other guys that I wanted, particularly Denzel Mims. He was still available at this point, so when they reached for Jefferson, in my opinion, that was a little frustrating, but I like this pick better now. I do like Jefferson. I think that he's going to fit in well with the Rams offense. I feel very, I like it. I'm neutral about this pick now. I know that you really like him though, so I'll let you talk more about him.
Yeah. So Van Jefferson was the 47th overall player ranked on my board. So I had him as top 50 player. So this falls along the lines of, they got a little bit of a steal here. Not a huge steal, but according to my board, a decent steal. In my opinion, I think Denzel Mims has a higher ceiling. I think Denzel Mims is somebody that's not actively on the roster. When you look at, what he brings to the table is that 6'5", big bodied receiver is the closest thing to DK Metcalf in this draft. Look, I totally understand wanting him. But at the same time, I feel like the Rams aren't looking at that type of receiver. I think that they're really just trying to stick to the consistency and their model. And I think just looking at the last few drafts, I figured out the type of players the Rams go after at the skill position level. And really what you're going to look for in a Rams brand receiver and a McVay receiver, a guy that can do it all, can win, especially as a blocker, because I think that's extremely important. The whole we, not me culture, they really value blocking from the wide receiver position. But one thing I really have to say, obviously reliability, hands, route running. The most important thing I think the Rams are really looking for is the ability to run after the catch. It might sound crazy, but Gerald Everett generated more missed tackles than any tight end in the 2017 draft. Kind of goes along the lines of, wanting to get guys that can make players miss and make things happen when they get the ball in their hands. And I feel like Van Jefferson's another guy, kind of fits that mold along with a Robert Woods. I mean, I've seen the guy go from, take a 3rd and 33 screen all the way to the house against the Giants. So, I mean, he can do that. Cooper Kupp, we saw that, against the Saints, that incredible almost touchdown against the Saints in LA last year. So, you have guys that can do that, Josh Reynolds included. I would have preferred if they went out and got at some point in this draft a big bodied wide receiver like you're looking at with Mims. But nonetheless, he's going to be perfect for their offense, their scheme. And I think Van Jefferson, people are sleeping on his speed. Jim Nagy tweeted out, and he is like the man of the whole Senior Bowl. He basically tweeted out that not only is Van Jefferson fast, but he ran faster, and he wasn't able to run the 40 time because he had a Jones fracture in his foot. But he actually ran faster at the Senior Bowl practices than both Denzel Mims and I believe it was Devin Duvernay, and they both ran in the 4.3s. So, I know people say speed's an issue, but I don't see it. and you're getting a fantastic route runner day one. So I think this is somebody that's going to come in and have a significant role in the offense. But moving on, we have the 3rd round pick. This one is very interesting. It's Terrell Lewis, Alabama, edge rusher, edge defender rather, 84th overall. This is their first pick of the 3rd round. They had 2. What were your thoughts on this pick, Alexis? I know at first, I kind of was like, I had other guys I wanted, including an Alex Highsmith who we spoke with. But Terrell Lewis, when you watch the film, you can't help but think this is a 2nd rounder that only fell to the 3rd rounder because obvious injury concerns.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, he's an outstanding player when he's healthy. I think there is a really big question mark around his health and if he can stay healthy. So I felt very neutral about this pick. I think that if he can stay healthy, it's great. I think he's got a lot of natural talent. I think that he's someone who's only going to progress and grow in the league. I think the question is just, can he stay healthy? I definitely think he's going to play in that outside linebacker position. So, I thought it was a good value pick. I think he's a risk worth taking in the 3rd. So I was happy with this pick.
Yeah, I hear you there. I mean, it's a little worrisome. If I want to play devil's advocate here, I can say that, Cam Akers might have been worn down at the fact he basically had to carry Florida State. Van Jefferson is coming off a Jones fracture, and Terrell Lewis has, a myriad of injury concerns. So, I mean, if I wanted to play devil's advocate there, I could say the Rams drafted 3 guys that might have some injury issues. But nonetheless, I don't know if that's entirely fair. I do think that, Terrell Lewis is definitely a very good player, very good prospect. I think he starts day one. I think the Rams truly drafted the first 3 guys in this draft, first 4, we'll get to talk about the next one. But I think the first 4 guys they drafted in this draft could start day one if asked to. I think Van Jefferson is ahead of Josh Reynolds, may not be on the depth chart, and because he hasn't been, with the organization as long as Reynolds, but he's already a better receiver, in my opinion, than Reynolds. Terrell Lewis, he has the length that Brandon Staley is reportedly looking for off the edge. So I think he would start over Ebukam, and I think you're looking at Lewis and Floyd on the other side and putting kind of a premium on stopping the run this season. Whereas, they're basically replacing, Dante Fowler, an explosive pass rusher, speed rusher off the edge, with someone that's going to more, stop the run and set the edge, and that's Leonard Floyd. So moving on, it's the last 3rd round pick that they had, and it comes in, it's the first compensatory pick of the draft, and it is Terrell Burgess, 104th overall, out of Utah, the safety. Now, I know people are saying he's a nickel, but Alexis, we got to talk about Terrell Burgess, because I don't think people realize, or maybe they're starting to, but they don't fully realize how good this pick was for the Rams.
I love this pick. I think that, Terrell is a guy, I know you were saying everyone is under the belief that he's a nickel, but I think that he can play pretty much anywhere at safety. I think that the Rams are going to utilize him probably in a couple different ways, but Terrell is just a baller, straight up. I mean, we talked to him before the draft. You and I have really liked him throughout the whole draft process. We were hyped when the Rams drafted him. I think that he's also going to start day one. I think that, he's going to be used in a couple different ways, but I think the Rams are really going to look to use him a lot. And I think that he's a great addition to that secondary.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. I think the only concern is something that, my colleague Blaine Grisak on downtownrams.com mentioned when we were going over and basically grading these picks on our article. Basically said, look, this pick is great, but what was the point of drafting Taylor Rapp last year? And I mean, I would make the argument as well. Seriously, when, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was there and you traded down and you missed out on Nasir Adderley, it was kind of confusing that they went with Taylor Rapp. And I get it in a sense because, John Johnson's an impending free agent. You had Eric Weddle, who retired the next year. But now you go out and get Terrell Burgess because you have to, because you don't have a true free safety on the roster, in my opinion. So I gave this pick an A+ as well as the Van Jefferson pick. 2 A+ in the first 4 picks is pretty good. I just think, to me, this is tremendous value. This is somebody that should have gone ahead of the other pick his teammate from Utah, the other safety that went to the Colts a little bit before him. Not complaining, though. He's going to be with the Rams. 4.4 speed in all. That is the most athletic safety I've seen the Rams have in quite some time. He's going to be able to make all sorts of plays all over the field. He's got tremendous range. If he does play nickel day one, I think that no matter what, he's going to end up being your starting free safety starting 2021. And it's just to break him into the position. But yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, he's somebody who can play all over the field, and you don't want to pigeonhole him in one position. Moving on, we have one of my favorite picks the Rams have made in quite some time, and that's Bryson Hopkins. Might be to the shock of people that I like them drafting a tight end so much, but I spoke with Bryson at the Senior Bowl. This is somebody that was pretty much told, or, from how it sounded when we spoke, that he and Tyler Higbee were viewed as a tandem for the Rams, and they were going to target him in the draft. They really liked him. Gerald Everett the aforementioned Gerald Everett that I was talking about earlier hasn't quite lived up to the hype of being, the first pick in the Sean McVay era. So I totally understood this pick. Plus, this is a value pick in my eyes. I don't think Bryson Hopkins should have been here in the fourth round. He's my number one tight end, had him as the 52nd overall prospect. But take me through your thoughts on this one, Alexis, because I know yours are a little different than mine.
Yeah, I had Bryson Hopkins ranked as my second tight end in the draft. So it was very surprising to me as well that he was available when he was. The pick was confusing for me. For the only for the reason that we have Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. I just thought, at that position to take a tight end when we had other needs at the time and we already have two starting tight ends was a little confusing to me. But listen, I love Bryson Hopkins, so I'm not mad about the pick. I do think that this signals that we have to move on from Gerald Everett, whether that be through a trade or releasing him or what it might be. I just don't think that there really is any way to utilize three tight ends in the system that the Rams play in. I think Bryson Hopkins is a lot better than Gerald Everett. And like you said, I don't think that Gerald Everett has really panned out how people thought he would and how the Rams hoped he would. So I like this pick a lot. I do think that Bryson can kind of do it all, block and catch. I think that in the league, are starting to see that almost every team is moving towards that two tight end system. So it's not shocking that the Rams are as well. I think that drafting him is just, really big indicator that the Rams are probably looking to move on from Gerald Everett. So we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would like to see them trade him during the draft, but nonetheless, they didn't. And we move on to the sixth round since they weren't able to get a fifth round pick. They had to wait from the 136th pick all the way to the 199, the Tom Brady pick, and they select Ohio State safety Jordan Fuller. This pick was not my favorite. Somebody that I felt, yes, he's like, I think I read he's the first 2 straight year captain for Ohio State in their history or in, a long time or whatever. So clearly this pick to me seems like he's going to supplant a Nick Scott, who was drafted by, in my opinion, the last regime of the special teams with Coach Bones and all those guys. So I think with this new Bonamego regime at the special teams, in the special teams unit, I think this is probably their ace that they're looking at. I don't see him, actually being much of a contributing factor on their defense, at least for the first year. But he's got nice size at 6'2". So, we'll see. But what are your thoughts on this?
I didn't like this pick. I didn't like this pick because this is clearly a special teams pick, and I didn't like using a draft pick on that at this point. We already drafted a safety in this draft in Terrell Burgess. Justin Fuller is going to be a guy that they use exclusively on special teams. I think you're right. I think that this was to make up for the Nick Scott pick last year, who they're probably looking to replace. It didn't make sense to me. I mean, we had other needs at this pick. So, I'm indifferent on it now. I mean, I'm not expecting him to play often or maybe even at all. So this pick was just a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, apparently they really liked him, so, I get it. And I'm not going to, destroy the guy because I don't think he's a terrible player and was definitely, you can make the argument draftable. But yeah, I had other players that I would have rather had the Rams go after, including, and we know they made out pretty well in UDFA, but I would have liked a Cole McDonald here, to name, one name. But moving on, the 7th round, there's 3 picks in the 7th round, and we start off with pick 234. This is quickly becoming a Rams fan favorite after that video that surfaced online. Clay Johnston, Baylor linebacker. This is somebody I felt had some, really intriguing film in 2018. He was hurt. I think it pushed him down the board. But, he's a fun player. He's athletic. Brett Favre said he's the steal of the draft. What does Alexis Kraft have to say to that?
I think that's to be determined. I am indifferent kind of about the pick. When the Rams are about to draft here, I was hoping we would go, in that linebacker direction. However, Clay wasn't on my radar. He's not a guy that I honestly watched film on before the draft. So when we picked him, I was a little confused and I didn't really know what to think because I hadn't seen much about him. And now that I have, I think we'll see. I think he has potential. I don't think he's going to be a big factor next year. I think that he's going to be somebody who isn't going to be utilized a lot, probably until 2021 or unless there's an injury. So we'll see. I honestly have no idea what to expect from him, but I really like him after that video that kind of went viral that he did. So we'll see. I don't know what to think at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I watched film on him. Him and his teammate James Lynch, they both really stood out to me on that Baylor defense. This reminds me of the Bryce Hager pick. I mean, this is somebody you could be looking at, continuing to sign with the Rams after his rookie deal. This is somebody I could see sneaking into the starting lineup maybe later in the year, kind of like a Troy Reeder did last year, if things do go south. I don't think that the crazy thing is here, while, I had other guys that I preferred, like Kiava Tizino, who went to the Patriots in UDFA, and, obviously a guy that, we interviewed, and Mo Berry as well. But, I think there's not a significant drop off between, most of the guys in this Rams linebacker room and Clay Johnston. I mean, if you're talking about 2018 Clay Johnston, he could have started last year. So, it's definitely pretty interesting there. We'll see. And if you get a starter in the 7th round, you really nailed it. The Rams notably got a starter, years back with the St. Louis Rams. They drafted EJ Gaines out of Mizzou in the 6th round. And that was a huge pick. They totally, ruined that by trading him away for Sammy Watkins. But, when you get a starter that late, that's a good job of drafting. Moving on, we have pick 248, and that is Miami, Ohio kicker Sam Sloman. Now, I personally, for me, I don't believe in picking kickers in the draft. I know the Rams drafted Greg Zuerlein, and that's everyone's argument to me, but the Rams also didn't draft Johnny Hekker, who's maybe going to be the greatest punter of all time. I think you can find special teamers, after the draft. And you and I were going over this with a bunch of people, during our live stream, and we kept saying, there's so many guys that are still available that are going to make rosters in the NFL. And that's, to me, where this kind of escapes me, where I think it might have been better off to just not draft a kicker, but especially the fact that they have 2. But apparently this is the number 1 kicker in the draft, and a lot of people like him, and they met with him. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I didn't like the pick because I don't believe in drafting kickers as well. And that's not to take anything away from kickers or say they're not talented, but there's just less of them. So it's not like a wide receiver or linebacker or whatever position where there's so many that you kind of need to get in there and make your claim on them. There's just less kickers. So it makes more sense to wait until after the draft to kind of, handle that position. But it's also confusing because the Rams signed another kicker out of the Canadian Football League, whose name I can't remember. I'm not going to try and pronounce because it's
you could just call him Liram.
Yeah, Liram. So it was confusing since they had just drafted a kicker. And I didn't think that he was the best kicker in the draft. I thought that Tyler Bass, I believe it is, from Georgia Southern, was the best kicker in the draft. I
He
don't
was pretty
remember.
good.
I don't remember if he was available or not. But yeah, I didn't like it because we had other positions that I would have liked seeing taken there. And also, I just didn't really understand why we would draft a kicker, but that's just me.
Yeah, and I think the Rams do make up for it, later on in UDFA. They got a bunch of, premier UDFA players. I mean, talking about getting like Bryce Perkins and Josh Love, two guys that should have been drafted, getting Xavier Jones, a running back that should have been drafted, a myriad of wide receivers that arguably could have been drafted, and, Cole Cabral, in the interior offensive line that, had an argument to be drafted, as well as, Greg Reeves. There's just, They did a nice job with UDFA, so I don't want to totally, eviscerate them for making a bad 7th round pick or one that I disagree with. But I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of picking the kicker, so I agree with you. And then lastly here, the Rams decide to go with the Clemson left tackle, who's everyone's saying is going to kick in at guard, but has very similar measurables and a very, very good. I would say a very good, a bunch of technical skills, and he's very well refined, and that's Tremaine Ankrum. He is very similar, stature to former 1st round pick for the New England Patriots, and now left tackle for the New England Patriots, Isaiah Wynn. So I will say this: don't count out Tremaine Ankrum eventually being a player down the line that can slide into this starting lineup. I think the height for an offensive lineman, he's 6'2". I don't think it's a huge deal. I think he's got plenty of length. He's obviously built over 300 pounds, so I'm not really too worried about his overall build. And this is somebody who played, significant, games that really came down to the wire at Clemson. I mean, you talk about going up against the Alabamas and, the Ohio States of the world. And I mean, he has been battle tested, and, he's come to play. So I'll just say this. I think the Rams absolutely aced this 250th overall pick. I think Tremaine Ankrum was a 4th or 5th round pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if he could play tackle or guard at the next level.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page. Totally agree. Loved this pick. 250, thought it was a great value pick, and I do agree that at some point I wouldn't be shocked if he's starting on that Rams offensive line. So I think they nailed their last pick in the draft for sure.
Yeah, again, agree with you. At the end of the day, I think the Rams had, and I know people are going to call me crazy, I think the Rams had the best draft I've seen them have in recent memory. They were able to get guys, just looking back, Cam Akers, Van Jefferson, Terrell Lewis, I think are all day one starters if the Rams want them to be. I think Terrell Burgess is a day one starter if they want him to be, so that's 4. I think Bryson Hopkins can be a day one starter because you start 2 tight ends. Most teams do. If you're starting 2 tight ends, I think he is ahead of Gerald Everett as a receiver. And Gerald Everett struggles as a blocker. Bryson Hopkins does as well. I think Bryson Hopkins is more suited for this offense, in my opinion. And then, I mean, you could make the argument if you were in a pinch, you could make the argument for Tremaine Ankrum, not as a day one starter, but, starting it down the line, as well as maybe Sam Sloman and Clay Johnston. But I think the Rams did a nice job. I think they got a nice haul, and I'm excited.
Me too. I agree with you. I think this is the best draft that I've seen them have in a really long time. I'm excited. I think that, I think everyone is just ready for the season to start with no sports, everything going on. The draft felt like a sporting event. I mean, it does every year to some extent, but this year I think it was much more exciting. People were much more invested. If you look at the numbers, a lot more people watched. So I just think, this was the first step in getting closer to NFL season. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for, this kind of draft recap for the Rams. This episode 298. We're almost at our 300th episode. Coming up next, we will have an episode breaking down the Rams schedule. So you don't want to miss that. That'll be coming soon. Hope you guys enjoyed. For all your coverage, go to downtownrams.com, and you can find us on all podcast platforms. For Jake Ellenbogen, she's Alexis Kraft. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast, and we're signing off until next time. Later, guys.